In 2016, California wife and mother Sherry Papini disappeared for 22 days. When she was found, she told authorities a detailed account of being kidnapped and tortured. Years later, in a stunning twist, Papini pled guilty to making false statements about what happened to her, setting off a media firestorm. Now, for the first time, Sherry Papini is telling her side of the story and revealing shocking new information. Sherry Papini, Caught in a Lie, an ID documentary event, Monday, May 26th at 9 on ID. Set your DVR. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 241 of the True Crime All the Time podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Just got back from vacation, a little trip to Gatlinburg where my daughter was dancing, and we had a good time. It was a little getaway, and but what I will say is I'm having trouble getting back into the swing of things.
Oh, yeah?
I think that's pretty normal for most people when they go on vacation.
It is, you just you almost need a vacation from a vacation.
Yep. Especially when you're in Gatlinburg, man. It's nothing but walking and people, and it was hot. We have some great Patreon support, so let's give some shout outs to Matthew Lilliquist, jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, thanks, Matthew.
And he wanted me to mention that he was turned on to the show by Bree Grubbs.
Well, that's awesome, Bree.
Christine Prasiznik.
Well, thank you, Prasiznik.
You might be closer than I was.
Yeah.
Riki Sullivan. I keep going back and forth between Reek and Riki. I'm not sure.
I'm going to say thank you, Ricky.
Yeah. Cam.
Good old Cam.
Charlotte jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, Charlotte.
Alan Carr Jr.
What's going on, Carr Jr.?
Tina Lawner.
Hey, Lawner.
Melissa Peters.
Hey, thanks, Melissa.
Blair Fanning.
Hey, appreciate that, Blair.
KL Broadway.
Good old KL.
Andrew Lee jumped out at our highest level.
Hey, appreciate that, Andrew.
Caitlin Graham jumped out at our highest level.
Man, look at that. Appreciate that, Caitlin.
Tina Albright.
Hey, Tina.
Tamara Davis jumped out at our highest level.
What's going on, Tamara?
Deanne Decker.
Hey, Deanne.
Charlie.
Good old Charlie.
Sylvia Van Duzen.
That's a Van Duzen of a name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't that a car or something back in the day?
Van Duzen?
Hopi.
I like Hopi.
Shelley Peterson.
Hey, Shelley.
Nicole Tucker jumped out at our highest level.
Appreciate that, Tucker.
And Bill.
Hey, Bill.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Van Zandt 1994.
I think it's a good year.
Yeah, it was a good year.
Yeah.
So we appreciate all the new support, the continued support. We had some great PayPal donations as well from Bill Green.
Hey, thanks, Bill.
Kim Garcia.
Hey, Kim.
Angelica Rodriguez.
What's going on, Angelica?
And Jennifer Shaw.
Man, look at that, Jennifer.
So thanks to you as well. Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time Unsolved, we have an episode out on the 1995 murder of Tina McMiniman. So we're headed to Lincoln, Nebraska to discuss that case.
Yeah, it's a sad case, obviously. You have an 18-year-old college student that comes home from work and supposed to return back to work for her second shift, but never makes it. And, they dive into the investigation, and there's a few leads. One lead kind of takes them down a path of a local guy that ends up being arrested, but is never convicted.
So make sure you check out that episode. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this week's episode of True Crime All the Time?
I'm ready.
We are headed down to South Carolina to talk about Jimmy Robertson. This is a man who murdered his parents to get his hands on their sizable fortune. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. These are scary types of episodes. When you think about kids killing their parents, turning on their parents. And, we're going to find out that the Robertsons were kind of an all-American family, fairly typical, except for the fact that they were extremely wealthy. Other than that, they were like every other family, right? They weren't perfect. They had their share of conflicts with each other. Now, most of the conflicts occurred between the father, Earl, and his son, Jimmy. And as the years went on, the arguments escalated to the point of murder. But it's normal, right? For there to be conflict from time to time in a family. It's just, you really can't not have it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody's got some type of family drama.
Yeah. Somebody's got a beef with somebody at some point. Now, I think the difference is, okay, you talk it out, you work it out, you move on. It doesn't escalate to the point where one person decides they're going to kill another person in the family.
Yeah, but, and there's no yeah, but.
But you just said, yeah, but.
I did. But when you get cut off from your meal ticket, sometimes people will do some strange things.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to see, right? Jimmy got angry about his parents cutting him off from their wealth, so he decided to murder them in a drug-fueled rage so he could get his hands on their money. I mean, they were worth over $2 million, so they were fairly wealthy. The brutality of his crime is considered as the worst violence Rock Hill, South Carolina detectives have seen in their entire careers. And Gibbs, to me, this is the part that is astounding. Jimmy had everything. He had money.
Yeah.
Because his parents had money and they were giving him money. He had a loving family. He had a very bright future. But when it all boils down, essentially he threw it all away after a series of bad decisions led him down the path to murder. Now, if you look at him now, he has nothing. Nothing. Not a thing.
Nope. Sitting there empty-handed. Well, he's got something in his hand, but it ain't money.
It ain't money, that's for sure. Jimmy's parents were Earl and Terry Robertson. I mentioned they were a family from Rock Hill, South Carolina. Earl and Terry were described as family people. They regularly attended church. They were law-abiding citizens. One of their friends told the Rock Hill Herald that Terry was warm, loving, and giving. Earl and Terry married in 1971.
Hey, they met at a frat party just like you and your missus.
Yeah, that's not true. But I did meet, and I'll just leave that one alone. I went to my share of frat parties back in the day, but that's not where I met my wife. Earl was attracted to Terry because she was vivacious and she was just fun. Now, Earl was described by friends as steady and dependable. So those are two very different types of descriptions, right? Terry, warm, loving, giving. Earl is more of a rock. He's steady. He's dependable. Maybe he's not as warm. Maybe he's not as nurturing as Terry was. He was a really good provider, which we'll talk about. But, that's not bad to be a dependable person.
No, not at all. And those two kind of probably played off each other very well.
I was going to say, maybe that's part of what you need, right? You need a balance.
Yeah.
Not everybody can be the fun parent all the time. Not everybody can be the nurturing parent maybe all the time. Somebody's got to draw that line in the sand and be the bad guy every now and then.
Right.
And, it's a strange dynamic being parents, and
it is.
Everybody has to figure it out for themselves. But I mentioned it. The Robertsons were very wealthy. Earl was an executive at a textiles firm called Springs Industries. Terry was an English teacher. Their two sons, Jimmy and Chip, were born in the 1970s, and they were their pride and joy.
Like most kids are, right?
Sure. Earl and Terry tried their best to be good parents. There was a lot in the research, Gibbs, about Earl, played baseball with the boys. Terry was proud of all of their accomplishments in school and sports. This was a family who traveled quite a bit. They even went on some international trips to Europe. And during the summers, Jimmy and Chip's grandparents took them to Alaska and Europe. They were living a pretty good life.
Not a bad summer with grandma and grandpa.
No, in Europe. And add on top of that, that these two boys were the heirs, obviously, to their parents' fortune. Jimmy and Chip both went to private schools. And, the thing about Jimmy was that he was a math genius.
Like myself.
Very much like yourself. Very good at calculations. He was an Eagle Scout, even into his teenage years. Jimmy attended Northwestern High School in Rock Hill, and he graduated in 1992. He was in the top 5% of his class, and he attended a 5-week program at the Governor's School for Academics in Charleston, one of the top private schools in South Carolina. So, this is a story, unlike many killers, right? When we do the background of killers, very rarely are we talking about these type of things.
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely privileged.
Yes, and we are actually going to get into that. A big part of this story and why the media says that it received as much coverage as it did was because you had a rich, white, privileged kid who killed their parents. Right or wrong, that's what came out in the research of why this was a big story and why it made the headlines and all of that. Jimmy spent part of his senior year as an exchange student in Germany. At his graduation, he was honored as one of Northwestern's highest achieving students. And I think as a kid, he was a very happy child growing up. But as he got older, and this happens with a lot of teenagers, right? He started to get into more and more conflicts with his parents.
Yeah.
Kids want their space. They want to be able to do whatever they want to do, especially you hit like 18, 19.
Right.
That's kind of where I experienced it with my oldest was that, okay, Dad, I'm an adult.
Yeah. I need my independence.
Yeah, I need my independence. Yeah, you're an adult, but you know what? You're not paying for all your stuff yourself. You still live here.
You're not that adult.
You're not that adult. There are still going to have to be some rules. And that's tough for kids. I think when they get a certain age. It was really after high school that Jimmy started to spiral downward. He did attend Georgia Tech for a couple of years studying engineering, but in 1997, he was kicked out of school for missing too many classes. And I didn't even know that was a thing back in the 90s because I went to college in the 90s, and I can tell you right now, they didn't give a rat's ass whether you went to class or not.
Yeah, I remember they were just happy to get the money. If you decided to not show up, that's up to you.
Well, and a lot of my classes had 200, 300, 400 people in them. They didn't take attendance. They didn't know if you were there or not.
No. You either went to your lecture hall or hope that you could get notes from somebody else.
Yeah. Now, maybe his engineering classes were different, smaller. I don't know. I will say this. My daughter nowadays, they do really want you to attend. And I remember thinking that's in stark contrast to what I remember from the time that I was in college.
Right. A long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but I can remember there were some classes that I attended only 3 times.
Yeah.
Picked up the syllabus, took the midterm, and took the final. Because there was nothing else. Your whole grade depended on 2 tests, and there was no homework to turn in. There was nothing else.
Yeah. So why go?
So why go? I just studied for the midterm and the final, and that was it.
And look at you now.
Well, yeah. It's maybe a reason why I had to come back home after a couple of years of college, but we won't dive into that too deeply. Earl was extremely angry at the fact that Jimmy got kicked out of school. And it was at that point, Gibbs, that he made the decision to cut Jimmy off, right? This is a family with a lot of money. They're paying for the college. They're giving expense money, probably even more than that, right? These kids were probably living very comfortably.
Oh, for sure.
Were given whatever they needed, whatever they wanted. And now all of a sudden, dad cuts you off. And like you mentioned earlier, okay, Jimmy's not going to be happy about that because why? He's grown accustomed to a certain lifestyle.
Every time I hear you say Jimmy, do you know what I'm thinking about?
The guy that talks in third person and says Jimmy does this, Jimmy
Seinfeld?
does that. Yeah. Because I always know what you're talking about.
You do.
So, but because he was cut off, Jimmy was forced to go to work doing minimum wage restaurant jobs. He just wasn't happy.
Well, that's a big change in your lifestyle, man.
From getting free money, right, from mom and dad and being able to buy whatever you want, you're really not having to work for it, to now you're having to scrape by on a minimum wage salary. It's a huge difference. He was very upset about this entire change in his lifestyle. And so he turned to drugs, he turned to alcohol, and he began committing petty crimes. He also, Gibbs, started talking to his friends about the idea of killing his parents.
It's bizarre, to hear that someone would do that. I think if I heard one of my friends talking about killing their parents, I guess you would think, whatever, man, why are you talking like that? I know things are rough right now, but I know you love them and they love you.
Right. I think back to 19-year-old Gibby, and you hear that. Now, it was a different time back then.
Sure.
In the 90s. And this is when this is taking place.
Right.
So if you heard that from one of your friends, of course, you'd have been, 37. So it doesn't quite equate, but you know what I mean. Are you taking it that seriously? Or are you just thinking, I've heard it before. You're blowing off steam.
Yeah.
I don't need to concern myself with this because it's not real. Obviously, this person is not really thinking about killing their parents.
Probably just thinking someone's just complaining again.
Yeah. The problem is they are. In Jimmy's case, he is.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Thinking about killing his parents. In August of 1995, Terry filed a report saying that Jimmy threatened to hurt her. At the time, he was living in his parents' basement, but they were requiring him to pay rent. And this argument kind of erupted over the rent payment.
Well, look, I moved out and moved back in at one point,
and
I had to pay rent.
Yeah. And I think that's happened a lot recently, right? To a lot of younger people, especially with the job market. And now I think people are living at home longer, but they're also kind of trying it out, seeing what it's like and finding out maybe it's not as easy and they're moving back home. It's not easy.
No.
It's not something that everybody wants to do. Once you're out, you usually want to stay out because you want that freedom.
Yeah.
And he's already upset with his parents anyway. So living in the basement and having to pay rent out of his minimum wage paycheck can't be easy for him.
Not going to go good.
Terry mentioned in the report that Jimmy had drug and alcohol problems, but no charges were ever filed. Jimmy was hospitalized for a period of time over the concerns that he would hurt his mother. So no charges by police, but obviously someone was concerned enough to mandate hospitalization. And I think that tells you something, that somebody took the threat as credible.
Sure.
In August 1996, Jimmy broke into the home of William and Alma Wood. They were his neighbors. He stole their car and some of their credit cards. He charged almost $4,000 on their credit cards at Sears.
Yeah, I'm thinking, what are you buying at Sears for $4,000 back then? But I'm thinking, I don't know.
Tools, man.
Tools, husky pants.
Husky jeans, sure. I mean, for me, Sears was always about tools. Yeah. Back then, Craftsman and all of that.
Yeah, good brand.
Earl and Terry sat down at the Woods kitchen table and they had to apologize on behalf of their son. Jimmy ended up serving some prison time. It was about almost a year for theft. At his sentencing, his drug possession charges were dropped under the condition that he entered a drug treatment program. So there's no doubt, right? He's using drugs on a regular basis. He was caught with drugs, but he didn't have to pay for that crime. He was on probation after his release and moved back in with his parents. I think Gibbs, by this point, Earl didn't want him there. He was fed up with Jimmy and what he was doing. Obviously, if you have to walk into your neighbor's house and say, hey, I'm sorry, my son stole a bunch of stuff and charged a bunch of money on your credit cards.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Embarrassing.
And you're not going to be real happy with your child at that point. But Terry did want Jimmy at home. And there's that dichotomy between two different parents and how they're choosing to deal with a situation.
Right.
You're going to have that a lot of times. And sometimes it can be split between, the dad thinks one way, the mom thinks another. Maybe the mom's the more lenient of the two, or maybe the dad is.
Right.
You never know. It can go either way.
But regardless, Jimmy still had a hard time being there anyway.
He did. And one of the things I think he really had a hard time with is that his parents were constantly comparing him to his brother, Chip. Chip's doing great. Jimmy was doing great at one point, and now he's not. So he thought, and maybe rightfully so, that his parents viewed him as a failure. Jimmy and Chip were close, but their relationship got a little strained too because of this comparison. Hey, TCAT fans, getting the care you need to stay healthy shouldn't be hard or expensive. Everyone should be able to afford their medications. Check out GoodRx. They help me find the lowest price on my prescriptions every time. With GoodRx, you can instantly compare prices for your prescription at every pharmacy in your neighborhood and save up to 80%. And this is what really blew me away. I did not realize that different pharmacies price prescriptions differently. GoodRx is free and easy to use, and many times it's often cheaper than using your insurance copay or Medicare. With GoodRx, you can find discounts for your prescriptions at over 70,000 pharmacies like CVS, Kroger, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Vons, Walmart, and more. GoodRx is the #1 most downloaded medical app, and millions of Americans use GoodRx to get affordable health care every month. I know I've saved a ton of money ever since I've been using the app. It works. So start saving up to 80% on your prescriptions today. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. goodrx.com/TCAT. GoodRx is not insurance, but can be used instead of insurance. In 2020, GoodRx users received an average savings of over 70% of retail prices. And next up is Caliper CBD. I've been using this for quite a while now. Every morning when I wake up, I open up a packet of Caliper CBD and I mix it with my coffee. My stress levels seem better. I have less pain and soreness, and it's helping me fall asleep easier. This is a dissolvable powder versus an oil that you have to hold under your tongue or something like that. I've got my whole family using it, and they're seeing the differences as well. Caliper CBD powder is the only clinically proven fast-acting CBD. It delivers 30 times more CBD in the first 30 minutes versus CBD oil. It comes in convenient and easy-to-use packs. There is precisely 20 milligrams in each packet, always THC-free, so feel better without the high. There's no weird taste, no oily residue, and it mixes easily into any food or drink. So get 20% off your first order when you use our promo code TCAT at trycaliper.com/TCAT, TCATT. You can try Caliper CBD risk-free for 30 days. If you don't love it, they'll give you a full refund. That's trycaliper.com/TCAT. Don't forget promo code TCAT for 20% off your first order. So all of this leads us up to 1997. Jimmy was 23 years old. Chip was just a year younger at 22, and their parents, Earl and Terry, were both 49 years old. Chip had just started college. Earl and Terry were very successful. We've already talked about that. And Jimmy was like the kind of struggling member of the family.
Yeah, things weren't going the way he would wanted them to go. Working for minimum wage, right?
Yeah, and also I think the way that his parents thought they should have been going.
Yeah.
We gave you everything, man. We sent you to the best schools. You did great in school.
Yeah.
What happened? Well, could it have been the drugs?
Could have been.
And why is your brother doing so well and you're not?
I think they thought with all the opportunities they gave him, that the last thing they thought he would have to do was take a minimum wage job. Nothing wrong with that, but it's not what they thought he should be doing.
No, because he was in college going for an engineering degree, and then all of a sudden, it's just like, okay, maybe, I'm sure drugs played a part in that. I'm not sure if they played the entire part, but obviously the drug use and all of that, you don't go to class, you get kicked out. The next thing you know, you're stealing from neighbors' houses.
Yeah.
Things are going downhill pretty quickly. On November 23rd, 1997, the Robertsons were getting ready for Thanksgiving, and they had some rituals. Earl and Jimmy usually did yard work to get ready for the holiday. Terry cleaned the house, and she was really big on wanting everything to look perfect for their guests because they were going to have a lot of them, coming for Thanksgiving. Things were fairly normal until the next day, the 24th. That's when Earl and Jimmy got into a huge fight. And this was a very heated fight where a number of threats were made. Earl told Jimmy to pay his rent or get out.
Well, if you're going to argue with me and not do what I tell you to do, then go ahead and pay my rent and you can stay. Otherwise, get on out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the argument also centered greatly around Jimmy's drug use. I think that was kind of a central theme in a lot of this. And the police were called to the home that day, and they found marijuana. They found quite a bit of alcohol inside the house. And what was apparent from all the research was that Earl was very much against any type of drug use. So I think he was very adamant that he did not want his son using drugs, or he didn't want anyone under his roof at all.
Yeah, I think he was a pretty straight guy.
But what this did was it caused Jimmy to kind of stew all night long, right? The anger was there, and then it builds and builds. And then you think about it some more, you get more angry, and it's kind of a vicious cycle. In the early morning hours of November 25th, so this is just the next morning, Jimmy called his girlfriend, Meredith Moon, and he asked her to come over. When she got to the house, Jimmy told her he was going to kill his parents, who were sleeping upstairs. And that's exactly what he did, Gibbs. He used a kitchen knife, a baseball bat, and a claw hammer to beat and stab his parents to death. Jimmy first entered the bedroom and stabbed his mother, killing her. Then, as his father Earl stepped out of the shower, Jimmy blinded him by spraying this bathroom cleaner in his eyes, and then he proceeded to crush his father's skull with the hammer, and then later with the baseball bat. Brutal.
Really brutal.
It was also reported that he kicked the lifeless bodies of his parents multiple times just to make sure that they were dead.
You can tell there was a lot of anger built up inside of him, and he really did just let it out.
In the worst way possible, right? There's a lot of ways to let your anger out. Some people go on a long run. Some people work out. Some people cross stitch. I don't know. You name it. Some people play games on their phone. What most people don't do is murder their parents.
No. Sadly, we've covered a few of them.
Yeah, and they're always scary to me. Now, the following information comes from Meredith's statement to a detective after she was arrested on November 25th. She said Jimmy called and said they were going to Philadelphia. Meredith arrived at his home around 3 a.m., and she said Jimmy was agitated. He crushed up a bunch of Ritalin pills and then snorted it like it was cocaine. In total, Jimmy ingested about 10 times the normal dosage of Ritalin. So I think we have to talk about this, Gibbs, because it's come up more than once. Not only are you taking 10 times the dosage, but because you're crushing it up and snorting it,
yeah,
it's entering the bloodstream much, much quicker.
Yeah, pretty rapidly.
Right. I mean, I assume Ritalin is a pill that is designed to be released. I don't know if you would call it extended release, but it's designed to work over a period of time.
Yeah, some type of time release.
Just like some of the opioids and things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
But what people are doing is they're crushing them up, they're snorting them, and then it's like you get it all at once. And it's just unbelievable rush that leads to, or can lead to, some really bad things. Jimmy told Meredith that he was angry at his parents. He told her about the argument that he and his father had gotten into. He also told her that his father wanted to invest Jimmy's inheritance in a golf course. And Jimmy was angry about that. And the fact that Earl was essentially cutting him off, right? He was done giving him the financial support that he was used to. So here you have Jimmy. He's high. He's extremely agitated. And I think he viewed all of this as kind of the final straw. You know, I've put up with this. I've put up with that. I'm not happy with the things that you're doing. I can't take it anymore. Now I'm putting words into his mouth, sure, but this is what I'm assuming he was feeling or thinking at the time. At 5 a.m., Earl's alarm went off, and Meredith said that they heard the shower turn on, and she added that Jimmy put socks on his hands, picked up a knife and a hammer, and then went upstairs to kill his mother. And she described to detectives, Gibbs, horrible screaming and yelling that she heard. Why, Jimmy? Why are you doing this? And she told detectives that she was so scared, she covered her ears and began saying la, 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 like over and over.
To drown it out?
To try to drown it out. And then eventually Terry's screams cut off. Earl came out into the hallway from the shower, and that's when Jimmy attacked him. He sprayed him with Tilex, a bathroom cleaner.
Yeah, I think it's got bleach in it or something.
Yeah, which is not going to be good on the eyes. It blinded him. Then he beat his dad to death. And Meredith described it as this pounding, like a sack of potatoes falling on the floor. And she said she had to cover her ears again. Jimmy eventually came back downstairs, but they heard a noise, and Jimmy realized that his dad wasn't dead. That's when he grabbed the bat, went back up, and he beat his father until he died. So, I mean, I think there's a couple of really brutal things here. Obviously, the murdering of your parents, that's brutal,
right,
in the way that it happened. I also think about a mother seeing her son she gave birth to, she nurtured, she loved.
She fought for him
to stay in the house, coming at her with a knife and screaming, "Why, Jimmy? Why are you doing this?" as he's starting to bring the knife down and stab her to death. Obviously scary. I mean, I think that goes without saying. To me, what I was thinking was, in that moment, to know that this person that you brought into this world is about ready to turn on you and kill you. I just can't imagine.
No.
After all this took place, Jimmy changed clothes. He put the murder weapons and clothes in a bag. He took a shower. He wrote a note. Then he broke a window and he got ready to leave. When it was all over, Meredith said that Jimmy told her his brother would be proud of them for what they did. So essentially, you know, he breaks this window. He's writing the note. He's staging the scene.
Yeah, making it look like a break-in.
Yes, to make this murder look like a break-in. And then the two of them left and fled to Philadelphia to meet Chip. Chip was in Philadelphia. That's where he attended the University of Pennsylvania. It was later that morning that police received a phone call from Earl's administrative assistant who said he was late for an appointment And I guess she was so concerned, Gibbs, that she called police because, and we've talked about this before, people who are extremely punctual, especially business owners or, high-ranking members of a company, and they know they have an important appointment or they're just there at this time every day.
Right.
They don't show up and they don't call. And that is so out of the norm for those people that it's almost like immediately someone is worried.
Yeah, especially when Earl was so steady and dependable.
Sure. Now, if it was you and you didn't show up, I would be like, yeah, that's just Gibby. I'm sure not picking up the phone to call police. I might try to call you.
Well, you would call me for sure.
Yeah, and say, where the hell are you at?
Yeah.
But Debbie Brisson was also worried when her coworker Terry didn't show up for a meeting. Terry was supposed to pick up a cake for Thanksgiving, then head into work. Debbie thought, well, maybe she overslept. So Debbie went to her house at 10 a.m. She knocked. There was no response. She walked to the back of the house and saw that the door was open and the window was broken. She went inside and called out for Terry. It was on her way to the master bedroom that Debbie tripped over Earl's body. And she ran into the bedroom because she knew there was a phone there. And that's when she found Terry's body. So you got to think about this scene, right? You're a friend who is in a friend's house. You're just thinking, okay, I'm going to find them asleep and say, hey, wake up, you're late, let's get going. No, you find two dead bodies. So Debbie was terrified. She tried to run out of the home, but she couldn't get out because the deadbolt was stuck. Luckily, at that moment, the police arrived. And apparently Debbie was hysterical. She was crying. She kept screaming over and over, they're dead, they're dead. So an officer put her in his patrol car and waited for backup. Once the police entered the home, they immediately found blood on the walls, floors, the doors. It was even on the ceiling. This was a horrifying crime scene, no doubt about it. Terry's throat was cut and Earl's skull was crushed. Earl was lying face down, clubbed to death with a blunt object. He had a towel on his waist, which I think indicated to police either he had just recently gotten out of the shower or he was about ready to take a shower.
Right.
His head injuries appeared as though they had come from the claw end of a hammer.
And they were so bad that brain matter was coming out
of his skull.
Yeah.
Tough scene to think about. And I think that's where you get the police saying or detective saying that this was one of the most brutal, if not the most brutal crime scenes that they ever encountered. Earl had a linear 2-inch cylindrical mark on his back. Terry was lying next to the bed, partially under the blanket, wedged between the bed and the wall. Her skull was fractured. Her face, arms, neck, and back were slashed and stabbed. One wound went from her wrist to her elbow, and it was so bad that the bone was exposed. So you're talking about a fairly deep cut.
Yeah. Very forceful stabs.
Rage. Another cut went from her ear to her chin. The knife blade actually broke from the force of the attack.
Like you said, rage.
And again, at least one detective described it as the worst crime scene they'd ever seen.
Be hard to get out of your head seeing something like that.
Yeah, because, okay, this is your job as a police officer, but at the end of the day, you have to go home and eat with your family.
Yeah.
And how do you reconcile all that? How do you turn into husband dad mode and just kind of leave it there? It's not like the job that you have now, the job that I had.
No.
Where, okay, let's crunch some numbers. We got a couple of calls today. We're doing this, we're doing that. Well, it's time to go home. I go home and eat with my family.
Yeah.
And we'll watch TV or do whatever. I didn't see dead bodies.
Right.
I wasn't in a situation where it was so tense, I thought I was going to have to draw my gun, or there was about ready to be a gun battle.
Right.
You really have to wonder how some of these people turn it on and off, or I guess turn it off. How do they shut it down and leave it there?
I don't know if they can.
Because I had no problem leaving my stuff at the office.
Yeah.
But this is a different sort of gig.
Yeah, I don't think they can leave it sometimes. I also wonder, those people that go in and do the crime scene cleanup, it's got to take a special type of person to do that as well.
I would say so too.
Yeah.
I would say so. So the first piece of evidence that police found was Earl's empty wallet laying on the floor. They called the credit card companies to look for activities on his accounts. And it took a while to calm Debbie down because she had been the one to initially discover them, but she was finally able to calm down and talk to police. She told them that Jimmy had recently moved back in and that she wasn't sure if Chip was home or not. And I think police weren't sure at this point, right? Exactly what was going on. Were Jimmy and Chip victims? Were they possible suspects? They didn't know. Then police found a note left by Jimmy, and it read, "Mom and Dad, gone to get Chip in his car. Sorry, but he needs me right now. Love, Jimmy." So detectives called the Philadelphia Police Department to try to get them to locate Chip, right? Kind of check on him, see if he's okay. Is he even at the university? But if we go back to the home, Gibbs, there were thousands of dollars worth of items in the home, probably tens of thousands of dollars. This is a pretty wealthy family.
So robber's dream. Far as,
yeah. If for somebody that is going to commit burglary, it's probably going to be pretty lucrative. But there was nothing out of place. And I think very quickly, police determined that the broken glass from the window, it was on the outside, which indicates that it was broken from the inside. So, okay, most burglars don't do that. You're breaking a window to try to gain access,
right,
which means you're having to break it from the outside. Police would expect to find the glass on the inside of the home. That's not what they had here. So very quickly, they're ruling out robbery as a motive for the murders, but at the same time, they know that this was clearly a staged burglary. Gibbs, let's take a quick break to talk about Credit Karma. Hey, Credit Karma has always been there to help you make better financial decisions, and now they want to help you even more. With a Credit Karma Money Spend account, you can be rewarded for good money habits. And who doesn't want instant gratification? Credit Karma Money is a brand new checking account where you can win cash reimbursements for making purchases. When you use your Credit Karma Money debit card, you can win instant Karma purchase reimbursements on items up to $5,000. Just pay with your debit card, and if you win, you'll be notified on the spot, and your instant Karma cash will be added back to your spend account. Open your FDIC insured spend account for free. There's no minimum balance requirements, no overdraft fees, and there's free withdrawals from a network of over 50,000 ATMs. And when you make a purchase between July 1st and July 23rd, you'll be automatically entered to win $1 million. Credit Karma Money. Progress starts here. Right now, visit creditkarma.com/winmoney to open your free account and start winning instant karma. Go to creditkarma.com/winmoney to sign up for free and start winning instant karma. That's creditkarma.com/winmoney. Instant Karma is sponsored by Credit Karma. No purchase necessary. Exclusions and terms apply. See rules. Banking services provided by MVB Bank Incorporated, member FDIC. Maximum balance and transfer limits apply. Don't let allergy season slow you down. Get common allergy meds for as little as $15 with GoodRx. So you and your family, pets included, can stop allergy symptoms before they start. GoodRx is free and easy to use. Just search for your prescription on the website or the app, compare prices, and get a free coupon to show your pharmacist. Save at over 70,000 local pharmacies nationwide, including Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Publix, Kroger, and many more. Check GoodRx before every trip to the pharmacy to save up to 80% on both brand and generic medications. And did you know GoodRx rewards you for saving money too? Join GoodRx Rewards today and earn points every time you use a coupon. Remember, GoodRx is not insurance, but works whether you have insurance or not. And it could be your insurance copay price. I've been using GoodRx for years, and I can't tell you how many times I have saved money even with my insurance. Stop allergies before they start and save big on allergy medications this season with GoodRx. Go to goodrx.com/TCAT. That's goodrx.com/TCATT. Investigators Tim Hayer and Ralph Misley from the York County Sheriff's Office led the case. They called Earl's mother, who was supposed to come for Thanksgiving. She told them that Jimmy was supposed to be picking her up any minute. And I think this was important because detectives knew within the first hour that Jimmy was their prime suspect. And it really started when they traced an unknown blue Honda that was seen parked outside the house to a guy named Douglas Moon, who turned out to be Meredith's father. Douglas told the police that at 3 a.m., Meredith used the car to take her best friend, Aaron Savage, to the hospital. Apparently, Aaron had this really bad cut on her finger. Douglas said that he and Meredith were originally from Georgia, and they moved to Rock Hill in 1992. She was a senior at Northwestern. In 1996, she worked a few part-time jobs, but was currently unemployed. Here's the kicker, Gibbs. He had no idea who Jimmy Robertson was and told the police, I've never even seen this kid. So, here's a dad who was not aware that his daughter was dating anyone, had no clue who Jimmy Robertson was at all.
Right.
So then he became extremely worried.
I bet.
Because now his child was missing. And it turned out that there was no record of Meredith or Aaron ever going to the hospital. The detectives reached out to Aaron. She told them that Meredith was really going to Jimmy's house and had asked her to cover for her. She didn't know the reason why. And a lot of us have been there, right? A good friend says, hey, if so-and-so asks, can you tell them that I was doing this?
You just asked me that the other day.
I did.
Yeah.
I just said a lot of us have been in that situation. Now, it's usually not for something nefarious. It's just that you don't want someone to feel bad, or we're not talking about cheating on spouses or anything like that. And we're sure as hell not talking about killing people, murder. But most people have been asked that by a friend at one time or another. And I think, like Aaron, she probably didn't think it was anything at all, other than the fact that Meredith wanted to go see Jimmy, and maybe she didn't want her dad to know about it. That afternoon, the South Carolina police finally got word that the Philadelphia police had located Chip. They had to break the news to him that his parents were dead, but it was noted that he didn't seem all that upset. He wasn't all that broken up about getting the news.
We've had many conversations about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty telling, you would think, to a detective or, a police officer. That's news that you've probably had to deliver before. You know how most people are going to react, especially to hearing that their parents have been murdered. So when you see someone who's not upset by news like that, what are you thinking? Right? Something's not right here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but it's not right.
We need to be talking to that guy face to face.
And they probably even got more curious when phone records showed that Jimmy called Chip in the early morning hours of the 25th around 3 a.m. Now, Chip said that Jimmy called him and spoke to him about coming to pick him up in Philadelphia, but Chip was evasive with police. He really did not want to talk to them, give them any information, but I think police were pretty smart about it, right? They didn't let Chip know that they were looking for Jimmy. What they did is they had Philadelphia campus police and Philadelphia PD set up surveillance outside of Chip's apartment. At the same time, detectives spoke to neighbors, and they found out that at 8 a.m., a neighbor named Wayne Langley saw Jimmy and a young girl that he didn't know walking to a car. Jimmy turned around and called out for Wayne to come talk to him, but Wayne said he couldn't because he had to go to work. He said that Jimmy seemed very happy. So I think that tells you a lot right there. If this is after he's killed his parents,
Yeah.
and he's upbeat and happy, man.
I'm thinking for Wayne, it's probably good you didn't go over and talk to him anyway, knowing his state of mind.
Yeah, who knows what would have happened to you. The bank finally called police and said that Earl's card was used near Rock Hill. It turned out that Jimmy used Earl's credit card at a store just outside of town, again in Virginia, and then again in Maryland. And they found him on surveillance footage each time. Jimmy also dumped evidence along the way, including the bat and his bloody clothes. He arrived at Chip's apartment after dark, but Philadelphia police were waiting on him, right? All of this happened very quickly. They were waiting for Jimmy, Meredith, and Chip, and they were arrested that night.
I think Chip was a little shocked
at being arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he told police that he loved his parents. They were extremely close. They were the best thing in the whole world. Police interrogated him for hours, but he left the police station the next day. Detective Misley got on a plane to go to Philadelphia to interrogate Jimmy. During the interrogation, Jimmy seemed pretty relaxed. It was described as him being nonchalant. Okay. Whether or not you killed your parents, if police are interrogating you about your parents' murder, I don't know that nonchalant is going to be the vibe that I'm giving off.
No, I mean, if you're not showing any emotion about being arrested or even about your parents' death, that's not good.
No, it's really sending a signal to detectives that, again, something's not adding up here. These people are not acting in a way that we would expect them to act or behave. Meredith was held for 2 days and questioned, and detectives told her it was best to just be honest. And Meredith said she got a call from Jimmy. He said that they were going to Philadelphia. Now, initially, Meredith lied. She said she was in the car at the time Jimmy murdered his parents, but then she changed her story and told the police that she was inside the house when it happened. She did finally tell the truth and reveal all the details of what Jimmy did. And the next day, she even helped them find the murder weapons and the bloody clothing and all of the items that, Jimmy had kind of dumped along the way on the road trip.
Yeah.
A lot of it was in a dumpster on Interstate 95 in Maryland.
Isn't it funny how they act when they tell this story to the police, right? First, they're going to deny, then they add a little bit more. It's like when you talk to your kids and your kids realize you've got them caught.
And they try to work their way out of it.
Yeah, and they tell you a little bit more and a little bit more. And before it's all done, they're crying and telling you the whole story.
Yeah.
And you're like, why didn't you just tell me from the get-go?
Yeah, I think, they probably rehearsed the stories that they were going to tell. But you have a pretty young girl. I think Meredith Moon was like 18 years old. And being interrogated by police, how many 18-year-olds can stand up to a very intense police interrogation? Probably not many. You're scared. Something really bad has happened and you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Meredith was ultimately charged with 2 counts of murder, robbery, and credit card fraud. In exchange for her testimony, she pleaded guilty to 2 counts of accessory to murder after the fact and armed robbery. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison and was eligible for parole after 7.5 years. In court, she said, "I just made a bad mistake, and you will never realize how truly sorry I am."
It had to be a difficult situation for her to hear everything going on, but should she have picked up the phone and called police? Should she have got up and left the house?
And went straight to the police? Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that you're there, right, at the very least, they're going to charge you with being an accessory. They charged her with murder,
right,
because she was there. But because she agreed to testify against Jimmy, they dropped it down. But still 20 years in prison. No joke.
No, not at all.
And she didn't kill anyone. I mean, how many cases have we talked about where people have murdered multiple times, been caught, murdered again, and even on the second and third time, they don't get 20 years.
Yeah, receive less than that. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
It's such a head scratcher at some of these sentences. I'm not saying she shouldn't have gotten 20 years. I'm fine with that. What rubs me the wrong way is the 1 year, 2 year, you're out in 6 months or whatever, and you murdered someone. I just don't get it.
The inconsistencies across the board
they're tough. Yeah. They're tough to reconcile. On November 27th, 1997, Jimmy was charged with murder. His trial didn't begin until 1999. And Jimmy's defense did their best to save him from the death penalty. That's what the prosecution was going for. They argued that he and his mother both had manic depression, now called bipolar disorder. They also argued that Jimmy's frontal lobes were abnormal. They told the jury that his abuse of Ritalin made him psychotic. And we talked about it, right? There were a number of reports that said he had crushed up and snorted 10 times the normal dose of Ritalin. The prosecution had a lot of very strong evidence against him. Number one, you've got the credit card trail. You've got the surveillance footage.
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, you have Meredith.
Oh, that's the big time. Yeah.
Yeah. As your key witness who is saying, Jimmy told me he was going to kill his parents. He did kill his parents.
Yeah.
I heard it. And then we fled and dumped all the stuff, all of that.
Strong testimony.
I don't know that there was really an argument against the fact that he killed his parents. I think what they were trying to do, his defense team, was say, well, you can't put him to death because of these circumstances. The jury, however, was not convinced by the defense's arguments, especially their arguments about Jimmy's mental health. So on March 26th, Jimmy was found guilty of first-degree double homicide. On June 7th of that year, he was sentenced to death, and apparently he covered his ears as the judge read out his sentence.
Well, he couldn't hear that, but he had to let Meredith hear him kill his parents upstairs.
You think he thought as long as he covered his ears, then it really couldn't be true.
Yeah.
If he couldn't hear it.
Maybe he said, la, 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 la.
Maybe he did. Jimmy has made a number of appeals and he filed several lawsuits. In 2000, Jimmy said in court that he didn't want to appeal his death sentence because being in prison for 60 years is worse than death. He was set to be executed in 2005, but just a few days before his execution, he filed an appeal for post-conviction relief, blaming his trial lawyers. His execution was rescheduled to 2010, but then he filed a federal lawsuit claiming he was wrongfully convicted. So, I find this interesting. We hear it, sometimes where people say, I'd rather be put to death.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to spend, the rest of my life sitting in prison. Now, a lot of times they say that early on.
Right.
And then as the execution gets closer, the next thing you know, they're filing appeals. They're doing everything they can do because I think it sets in.
Yeah. And I also think, while they're waiting for the trial to happen, they're in county jail. It's a little bit different than prison. And I think once they get over to prison, depending on how things go, maybe they get more relaxed and get into the swing of the prison life versus what they thought it was going to be like. It could go bad too.
Sure.
I mean, it's never good. I'm just saying maybe they had it built up in his head it was going to be so much worse.
His lawsuit was denied in 2011, but in 2016, the South Carolina Supreme Court ruled that the post-conviction relief case was improper because Jimmy's lawyer didn't have enough hours of continued course credit. The court ruled that his lawyer did not have the right post-conviction relief death penalty experience. So another federal court lawsuit was filed, arguing that he had been held illegally in prison. That appeal was also rejected. He filed a new appeal, got some new lawyers. His new lawyers argued that he deserved a retrial because his 1999 lawyers were inadequate. You see that in almost every death penalty appeal.
Of course, yeah.
Right? Ineffective assistance of counsel happens all the time. It's kind of a go-to. They also argued that there were mistakes made that warranted a new trial. They said his original lawyers did not introduce mental health histories of Jimmy and of his mother. They argued that Jimmy had long-standing, severe, and improperly treated mental health issues. They also said that his original lawyers improperly inflamed the jury. His new lawyers planned to bring in experts on bipolar disorder and parricide for his appeal. Now, prosecutors fired back that Jimmy was tested multiple times for mental competency and that he didn't deserve a retrial. Tommy Pope, who was the lead prosecutor at his original trial, told the Herald Jimmy Robertson sealed his own fate when he bragged in great detail of how he brutally murdered his parents. A jury of York County citizens heard every detail and found Jimmy guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and sentenced him to death. His attorneys at trial did everything legally possible to protect his rights. Mr. Robertson should look in the mirror, not blame his attorneys when he finds himself facing the death penalty for the death of his parents. Okay, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm down with that. But it's not going to stop someone who decides they don't want to die. It's not going to stop their attorneys from doing anything and everything they can do to either try to get the death penalty overturned or get a new trial, a new sentencing, whatever they can get, they're going to try to get it. In April of 2019, Jimmy attended an appeal hearing in the very same courtroom where he was sentenced to death. The hearing actually never took place. He was in the courtroom for less than 1 minute.
It's because he's a little spoiled.
Well, apparently he didn't want to have his shackles on, but the Department of Corrections required him to be shackled. And so in response to this, he said, "I'm out of here." And he was led back to his holding cell. And I actually found this video on YouTube. It didn't have great sound, but you can see them kind of talking back and forth about this issue of the shackles. And it's very quick. It is less than a minute long. And he basically walks back to the door and they cuff him and they go.
Yeah.
His next scheduled hearing was postponed because of a conflict of interest with his new attorneys. They confirmed that a former peer of theirs worked on the Robertsons' defense in 1999.
Oh, that's a conflict.
Yep. So they thought that they would no longer be able to represent him because obviously everyone was arguing that his 1999 team was inadequate. The judge agreed that he needed a new lawyer, but there's no date set for when his case will be heard. And this is something that you and I go back and forth on all the time. Now, does it matter how long it takes for all this stuff to happen? Not really. He's sitting on death row. Now, it might matter if he gets a scheduled execution date.
Yeah.
But man, it just seems like everything takes so long.
And I wonder sometimes if it's just the attorneys knowing that we can file this, we can do that. This will get us another 4 years. This will probably get us another 2-3 years here.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money about that. There's a lot of legal wrangling that I think that goes on And attorneys are smart. They know the system. They know that if this happens, it's going to cause another 1-2 year delay. I think that does come up. In total, Jimmy has served 20 years on South Carolina's death row. He's currently incarcerated at Broad River Correctional Facility. One of the things that I found extremely fascinating, Gibbs, is that apparently Jimmy got a cell phone snuck into him in prison, and he used it to go on some dating websites. This sounds like something you would do if you found yourself in prison.
Hey, now.
Well, it does.
Just don't ask me where I keep that cell phone.
He's also constantly made attempts to get attention. He sent the prosecutor holiday cards every year, sends flowers to his parents' church, and is always trying to get on TV. And we've already talked about the fact that he's had, different attorneys, but he's had a lot.
Almost a dozen.
Yeah. Since 1997, he's had 11 different lawyers. Meredith Moon served more than 10 years in prison for being an accomplice to the murders. She was released in 2010. Since then, she's gotten married and basically tried to start her life over.
She's like, man, I just put that behind me. I'm sorry it happened. And,
Yeah, it happened when I was 18 years old. And again, she did something wrong. She didn't kill anybody, but she definitely could have walked away. She could have made a phone call. There are some things that she could have done. No doubt about that. Chip became the sole beneficiary of his parents' estate. He was never charged with anything having to do with the murder of his parents. Testimony from Jimmy's trial revealed that Jimmy called Chip before he called Meredith, but it has never come out exactly what was said on that phone call. Now you have to wonder because the timing of it is very strange.
It is strange.
Some people have argued that Chip also wanted his parents dead and may have conspired with his brother. Now, Chip has had his own issues. He went to jail in 1999 on drug charges, but has since been released. He left South Carolina after his time in prison. He wrote to the Herald in 2005 saying that South Carolina should be embarrassed if his brother ever gets a reprieve from his death sentence. So I think that tells you right there what he thinks about his brother Jimmy.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's not happy about what he did. Now, was he involved? I have no idea. We don't have any evidence, and obviously the police don't have any evidence to prove that he was. There's been some other strange things in this case. The person who was in charge of the money, the Robertsons' money, he later spent 3 years in prison for fraud, for stealing from his client.
Greed, man.
Yeah, we see it all the time. And I kind of touched on this up front, but according to the Rock Hill Herald, the Robertson case got so much attention because a rich white kid of privilege who claims to have been disciplined to the point of abuse, despite the fact that his parents showered him with money, killed his parents in an attempt to get more than $2 million in cash and insurance. This was, is, and always will be big news. So you and I often talk about why do some cases get a lot of attention? Why do some get very little?
Yeah.
This is the type of case that people tend to find fascinating. They tend to gravitate towards.
And the media is going to cover it because they know people want to hear that kind of stuff.
Yeah. People want all the details and they want to know why. Why did this kid who seemingly had everything decided that he needed to kill his parents? South Carolina is going through a number of legal issues with their death row inmates right now. As of this year, there have been 2 death row inmates who have been required to choose between a firing squad and a 109-year-old electric chair for their execution.
Dang, man. I don't know. I keep thinking of that movie with Tom Hanks and that
Green Mile.
Yeah. How messed up that was with that electric chair. So
firing squad can't be too great either, though. I don't know.
I want to make sure I got the guy with the good aim.
But, these people didn't want to choose, so they decided to sue the state. The problem that South Carolina is having is that they're not able to complete lethal injections because they can't get the pharmaceutical companies to sell them the chemicals. I guess in South Carolina, there's no shield law to protect the company's identity, so they don't want to sell the drugs to the state. I mean, before this, the option was lethal injection or the chair, so inmates always chose lethal injection because they knew that was going to delay their executions. But apparently, lawmakers are working on solving the issue of putting a firing squad together. When Jimmy's latest appeal is decided, his death sentence will most likely be upheld. But who knows what the state of South Carolina's executions will be, or if he has to choose, what's he going to choose?
I don't know, man.
Firing squad? Electric chair?
I'd have to go with the firing squad.
I'd go none of the above.
Well, I would go for that too, if that was an option.
Yeah, that's not going to be an option. So I think, Gibbs, as we wrap up this case, you and I often talk about the death penalty from really the moral side of things, right? People are opposed to the death penalty. People are okay with it. But, there's also the other side to look at that really doesn't have as much to do with morality. It's the fact that it's expensive for taxpayers. You have the years and years of legal battles that are exhausting for everyone involved, including the victims and their families. There's no doubt it's much more difficult to execute someone than it is to give them a life sentence.
Yeah, I agree.
But on the flip side of that, you have people and you have victims' families who want these individuals who have taken their family members' lives to pay the ultimate price.
Absolutely.
And so we keep going back and forth. We wrestle. States wrestle with it. Lawmakers wrestle with it. People wrestle with this kind of back and forth between death penalty, no death penalty on a number of different levels. The morality of it, the legality of it, the cost of it, and all of this stuff.
By the way, it's wrestle.
Yeah, it is wrestle. Sorry.
Just wanted to,
I'm sorry for the way I said it. But that's it for our episode on Jimmy Robertson. Again, I'm always blown away by these. I just don't understand how a person can want to end the lives of their parents. Now, could you make an argument in some of the cases where people have been abused to such a horrific degree? Because we've talked about killers like that.
Absolutely.
Could they want to see their parents dead? Yeah, I think they could. I'm not saying it's right, but here's a guy who was given everything. Like you said, had every advantage to succeed in life.
And his mom absolutely loved him.
And he kind of peed it down his leg.
Yep.
And then when he did, he got mad at his parents because they weren't going to put up with it.
Right.
They weren't going to keep giving him everything while he did nothing.
And he didn't like that. So he decided to do what he did.
Yeah, because I'm going to get my hands on $2 million.
Yeah.
And then I'll be okay. Then I can do whatever I want, right? I can do all the drugs I want.
Yeah.
I don't have to work at the restaurant making minimum wage. All I have to do is end the lives of the people who cared for me and brought me into this world. That's all I have to do.
How's it like it now?
Probably not too well. But we got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear 'em.
Okay, I'm going to try this one more time. Hey, Fergie and Gibby, this is Amy Gibson from Somerville, South Carolina. I work third shift, so I figured I would take advantage of that and be one of the first to call and wish Fergie a very happy birthday and hope that you have an awesome day. I'm a long-time listener, but I've only been a Patreon supporter for several months, and I'm really hoping to be able to increase my support in the near future as, your podcast is truly a worthy investment. I really want to be able to hear my name picked from the vault someday, so keep doing what you both do so well. I love listening to you guys, so have a great day. Bye.
Well, we sure appreciate that. We definitely appreciate the support on Patreon. That means a lot to us. And the fact that she said we're a worthy investment, Gibbs. I don't know anybody's ever called us that.
I've never been called worthy of anything.
Well, actually, she said the show, but by extension, she's saying we are.
See? I told you I'd mount to something someday.
Mom, Dad, I told you.
Yeah.
No, we appreciate it very much.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Heather over here in Kansas. Just wanted to call and let y'all know that listening to you guys has really helped me through the last probably year and a half. Started listening to you guys. It's funny because the first episode you introduced Gibby, which my husband's nickname is Gippy because our last name is Gibson with a P. So I continued listening to you, but listening to you guys helped me through his whole deployment last year. I'm 10 months sober now, and listening to this podcast has really been a great distraction. And it's helped me a lot. And I just wanted to thank y'all for that. And keep up doing what you're doing. I love listening to you guys. You're hilarious. And stay safe and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
Wow, such a good voicemail. And congratulations on the 10 months of sobriety. That is huge.
It is.
And we're just really proud of you. I know you're saying good things about us. We're proud of you.
We are.
Keep it up.
Well, that didn't sound like either Mike or Gibby, but this is Sydney in Indiana. I just wanted to call and say that I'm a little upset today because it's raining, pouring down rain here in Indiana, and I deliver mail. So I can't really carry my phone on me. I don't want it to get damaged, but I just wanted to say that I completely enjoy listening to your podcast literally all day while I'm out here delivering mail. And I don't deliver in the best part of this area, so I'm constantly looking over my shoulders, listening to the podcast because you just never know. But yeah, I just wanted to call and say that I've been listening for a good while, listened to all of the Unsolved episodes, and I'm trying to get caught up on the true crime all the time. So, yeah, this is so cringy, but I just wanted to call and leave a voicemail since I never have, and I constantly listen to y'all, and I just wanted to say thanks for taking the time to do everything you do, and keep your own time ticking. Bye.
I didn't think it was cringy at all.
No.
Now, I think what she was talking about in the beginning is whatever the voicemail says or whatever it says when it's telling you to leave a voicemail.
Yeah.
I don't know if I recorded that. I don't know what. It's been 4 or 5 years since I did it. So
Probably some.
Or it could just be a computer or an automated thing. I don't remember.
That's cool. And she does the mail like you did for a short period of time.
Like, I love that job, man. And I think I would love it even more now being able to listen to I just had to listen to music back in the day.
Yeah. With your little Discman.
Walkman or whatever we had.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. My name is Inika, and I'm calling from Adelaide, which is in South Australia. Long-time listener to your podcast, and I just want to let you know how much I enjoy it. I listen to it on the way to work, on the way home from work, before I fall asleep at night. Mike, I love the references you make to your wife, a teacher, because I'm a teacher too. I always have a little giggle because some of the things you say really relate to me. I teach psychology and I teach criminal psychology, so it's really interesting for me when I listen to your podcast to do a mini analysis on the psychology of the criminal and why they're thinking, feeling and behaving the way that they do. I love the banter between you guys. Yours is the first true crime podcast that I ever listened to, and it really got me sucked in, and now I subscribe to a range of others, but yours is the first and the best. So howdy from down under, and keep your own time ticking.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And we're honorary.
Honorary?
We're honorary members of the South Australia Police Department because we have
patches to prove it.
Yeah.
I don't think we're honorary anything if you can't say it. They're going to take our whatever. They're going to take it away from us. We had some mailbag gives. Cheryl Reed sent us the Serial Killer Cookbook.
Awesome.
This is super cool. This is like recipes based on what infamous killers selected as their last meal.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting stuff. She also sent some licorice for you and some jerky for me.
Thank you.
And then our good friend Lottie sent us in both birthday gifts, a bunch of licorice from you and some Albanese gummy bears, not the sugar-free ones.
Oh, I was hoping they were the sugar-free ones for you.
And some smoked sausage for me. So she knows this very well.
Thank you.
So we appreciate all of that. All right, buddy, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
At the turn of the 20th century, rapid industrialization, urbanization, and political corruption were ravaging America. But soon, President Theodore Roosevelt and a diverse group of reformers known as progressives would fight back. Hi, I'm Lindsey Graham, the host of Wondery's podcast, American History Tellers. We take you to the events, times, and people that shaped America and Americans, our values, our struggles, and our dreams. In our latest series, we explore the Progressive Era, which came to be defined by Teddy Roosevelt and others who believed in a strong, active government that worked on behalf of all Americans rather than the privileged few. As the United States entered the 20th century, these progressives hoped to steer the nation in a bold new direction, to launch an era of reform to restore power to the people. Follow American History Tellers on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. Experience all episodes ad-free and be the first to binge the newest season only on Wondery Plus. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Start your free trial today.